What's going on there, folks? Good afternoon. It's the Earthmaster here on this finally Friday. Woohoo! August 26, 2022 date. It's about 11:48 a.m. California time here, so technically still morning. Latest quake on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 1.4 out in the California region. So we got a lot to talk about here in this update, including some earthquake activity around Yellowstone National Park, and a lot of space weather events going on right now far as the sun goes, producing quite a few moderate to large M flares overnight and this morning time frame. This here is the current GOES X-ray flux 1 minute data showing, we had an M7.1 come in, or 7.2, and then that was quickly followed up by another M flare. We are trending downward right now from the activity, but it looks like we're starting to maybe possibly get some more crackling and popping going on from these solar flares. The active sunspots right now, this morning, this 3088 popped off a good sized CME. It was away from us, not directly pointing towards Earth. There's actually a movie down here, or a picture of that CME blast and the associated M flare. And again, that was directly pointing away from us, actually, and I don't think that's going to have any type of effect on Earth whatsoever. But we did see a couple different flares this morning, as noted on here, an M2.1, M7.2, and then very shortly after the M7.2, we've seen an M5.3. So things really popping off. The M7.2 was from a different source. As far as the sunspot region goes, it's going to be 3089. This one down here, the latest imagery, shows this little dynamic complex here of the magnetic field. The big one, though, I think we're going to have to watch is the one that's going to be departing the Earth side of the sun. But can't discredit this one, as that has already popped off a significant M flare earlier this morning. M7.2, 3089 is the culprit for the largest flare so far. Once again, that's going to be 3089 over here on the far side. The latest imagery right here, though, still kind of shows that growing. And sometimes these things degrade a little bit in the magnetic field department, and then they'll reform and restructure, get a different structure of the magnetic field, and then take off from there. So we'll watch these couple sunspots. There's that one that's still in the coronal hole, 3086. That is this one right here, within 17. The latest imagery right here still shows that that feature. It is kind of facing us, but southward tilt on this coronal hole. Not for certain if we're going to see any glancing blow from the solar wind stream, the high-speed solar wind stream from this hole, but we'll keep an eye on that, as it is facing us, but kind of tilted towards the south there. There's the pretty awesome looking view of, look at that sunspot there is beautiful. This is the one that produced the 5-pointer M5, and the other one on the southeastern limb over here is the one that produced the M7.2, and they both look pretty awesome from this view, this angle. And I think these things are going to pop off a couple more here today and over the next couple days. Just looking at their magnetic fields there, it looks pretty possible. In fact, right now, 99% chance of a C flare, and that's almost a certainty because we are well into the C flare category. M flare at 50% chance. We already seen a couple of those so far. X flare at 20% chance. That's a pretty good elevated potential, which is I think reasonable in terms of the magnetic fields that we have with those sunspots. And we'll watch for that today. Good possibility as we head into the daytime area operations, I guess, and further into the daytime, right? We're going to see if these things pop off a couple flares, bigger ones, hopefully. I don't know. I kind of like the activity a lot in terms of being active, right? Need some good CMEs facing us as well. So let's move on and see what we got far as the 3-day geomagnetic forecast calls for. And right now it's green. But again, this is all subject to change after review of, well, the CME this morning, and also the coronal hole activity that we're looking at now facing the Earth, and any other subsequent major flares or CME that's going to be produced. This is all subject to change for as the 3-day geomagnetic forecast calls. Current solar wind stream. Let me check this here real quick, see what we got for the latest data. Things pretty minimal in the terms of current solar weather as far as real-time solar wind goes. So again, that's all subject to change here in the future. I do want to check out these magnetic fields, see what we got for they all still look about the same, even though they're producing some pretty good M flares. 3089 was this one. I don't think this has been updated yet. Still has a beta class magnetic field. Far as the most likely culprit of any major flaring, see what these guys are listing it as. Looks like best potential 3088 right now with far as a C flare goes, but it looks like 3085 is the one to watch for any type of X flare potential. They do have it set as a 5% chance above all the others, and 3085 is this huge one up here. Although the latest imagery here looks like it's starting to tame down a little bit, there is still some close quarters up there between the magnetic fields, but we'll watch that and see what happens throughout the day. All right, guys, let's see. Yellowstone National Park here, swarming as well. Of course, super volcano up in Wyoming. Last night we had a couple 3-pointers kicking off here in the area of northwestern corner of the Yellowstone National Park. Let me bring up the USGS map here and show you guys exactly where this activity is kicking off at. Bring this back here, all magnitudes. Let's see, so they did drop down. It looks like they dropped down one of the magnitudes. We did have a 3.4 up here in the mix. Not for sure why they dropped it down, but looks like so far we've had a couple low-grade 3-pointers, 3.1, 3.1, and a couple other 2s out there as well, and some other smaller earthquakes there in the mix of the ongoing swarm there at Yellowstone National Park, for a tally of about 16 earthquakes so far. And it is situated kind of towards the northwestern corner of the park, but northeast of West Yellowstone area. So that's going to put the swarming epicenter roughly within the Holmes Hill area and possibly the Maple Creek region. But I think the Holmes Hill has the best viewing of all the earthquakes that are taking place here on this seismograph. There's the 3-pointers. Now, I think here, let's double check. They have those 3.1 set at 0335 and 0551. 0335 is going to be this one. No, it's going to be this one. And 05, what's the other one? 51? 0551 down here. So technically, they're missing one earthquake at least here prior to all this activity. See this one here? It looks like it's about 300, and I'm not seeing that on the map there. This is the most newest first, so it should be between here somewhere or prior to this, and I'm not seeing it. So it looks like they may have left out one earthquake from all that mix there, and it did show up on quite a few other stations, so I know it's a legit earthquake. They may just be trying to figure out the exact, and it's this one right here that I'm kind of wondering about, because these two, they're saying these two right here are the same identical magnitudes. I don't see it though. This one looks a lot stronger in terms of the signature across the area, so I don't see how they could be the exact same magnitude. But it is what it is. That's what they stated. but we'll watch and see if they include the other one. Kind of the one that seems like it may have started off this whole swarm sequence here at Yellowstone National Park. So we'll watch that one. Again, that's right around the 0300 time stamp. The first one they mention is this one right here, 0335, listed right here on the map, 0335. So one more missing, but hey, they'll make it hopefully, right? And as you can see here on the graph, aside from these bigger ones, there's quite a few small microquakes in the mix here as well. And it looks like they did a pretty good job of adding on some of those smaller quakes. There was one down here. This looks like a 2-pointer in between 1530 and 1630. So we're looking for like a 1600 UTC time here, which would be no, I take that. Yeah, hold on a second here. UTC time, is that right? Right around the 1600 UTC time. So it looks like they haven't got that one on there yet. The last one was at about 1437. So I can probably add a couple more earthquakes there over the last, couple hours or so, this morning time frame, including at least a 2. That's got to be at least a 2 on the magnitude scale there. And I'm sure they'll get to it, right? And with over the last half hour or so, that swarming is still continuing. So, it could turn into a pretty nice swarm. This comes after some activity inland yesterday, well inland up against the North American Craton here, right around central Wyoming. This earthquake here was prior to all this swarming activity up into the northwestern portion of the state. Had a 3.3 yesterday afternoon out there. And also seen some movement around the Stanley, Idaho area along the Sawtooth Fault system. That one popped in at 3.7. But I find it weird, though, because we haven't really seen a whole lot of activity in this area that's seen a 6-pointer a couple days ago, far as technically speaking, within the last month. And now all of a sudden we get a 3.7, but no further aftershock sequences here. So I find that a little on the odd side. So we'll have to watch the Idaho region pretty closely. But overall, I think pressure has been pretty great out here against that North American Craton region. And that's why we're seeing all that inland earthquake activity and earthquake swarms up there at Yellowstone National Park. I can't say this is volcanic. I mean, it is a super volcano, but this area is riddled with fault systems, and it is right up against the North American Craton. So a lot of Intermountain West earthquake activity occurs throughout all of these fault systems here. And that's kind of what we're looking up there on the Yellowstone map. If this was volcanic, far as magma movement, intrusion, stuff like that, it would be a different signature than these typical earthquake signatures we see on the map today. And there was no doubt there's quite a few of them. And the swarm looks like it is still going. I did add a Yellowstone station onto the live stream, so kind of watch that as well. Although, kind of having some issues accessing like Maple Creek and Holmes Hill, Madison River area, but I'll keep trying it. I got the station called Canyon, which I'm not for sure if it's in here or not, but it is somewhere, I believe, around the center portion of the caldera. And of course that will pick up any 2s and 3s that may come into the region. All right, let's back out of here. Let's see what else we got for the West Coast, California area. Getting some activity ramping up here along this segment of the Hayward Fault, or Hayward Fault, right? Yeah, Calaveras Fault looks like. There's a little bit right around the Hayward Fault, but most of it on the Calaveras Fault, extending down to the creeping section of the San Andreas Fault. Just some microquakes. If we look at the 2.5 map and above, we only had one 2.5. This one coming in late afternoon, yesterday time frame. So since then, the majority of the quakes here, all microquake activity, and really haven't seen the movement along the eastern crest here of the Sierra Nevada that we have seen over the last few months. Things just kind of calm right now, including Ridgecrest area as well. A couple small microquakes in that area, but normally this thing's pretty loaded with quite a few quakes. One earthquake down here. This is Now this is a scary part here. The shear fault, the Garlock Fault shear zone running into the San Andreas Fault here. Of course, it extends a little bit across here into the Big Pine Fault, right? What's it called? Big Pine. Let's see here. Big Pine Fault Zone, Lockwood Valley section. Haven't seen a whole lot of activity on this specific fault system in a while, and I always worry about this maybe having a bigger earthquake and also triggering the San Andreas Fault at the same time. I mean, it's kind of a sharp shear zone right here, and I can't help but wonder all the stress that's built up here in this region. But for now, 1.4, pretty shallow earthquake at the surface, just off the San Andreas Fault, but on the Garlock Fault shear zone. Further down south, as far as that swarming goes, near the Borrego Springs area and the San Jacinto Fault zone, kind of looks like it's tapering off today. But, don't let your guard down out there in Southern California. I would never let my guard down out there, as it's always in a, it's just one day it's going to have a pretty large earthquake out here. And many of these other fault systems here are very capable of producing some larger quakes as well. Not like the 8.1 that we're expecting along the southern segment here of the San Andreas Fault, though. All right, Nevada, a little spotty activity around Tonopah, it looks like, and some movement throughout the Utah area. Noticing a little bit more activity across Oklahoma and the western Texas area around Pecos. Let's see what we got up here north of Stillwater. Outside of the Pawnee region, a couple earthquakes, some very small ones, but looking at the satellite view shows I can already see them from that elevation. Some scattered oil pumping operations out here and injection wells, it looks like. There's some houses out there as well, but there's also that kind of looks like somebody's house. But some of these other features here look like they're possibly older pumping operations here. With looks like it's been deserted, but the area is still riddled with weak spots and areas where they injected that wastewater. Eastern part of the country, pretty quiet. We haven't seen any earthquakes out there in South Carolina or anywhere across the eastern portion of the country in a few days, so I'm sure it will come back around. Puerto Rico area, gotten a little bit of linear activity up here around the Puerto Rico Trench, a couple 2s and some 3s. And South America filling in a little bit, it looks like, across the area. Getting some deeper movement. Last earthquake here just a little bit ago, a 4.2 into the Peru area, 217 kilometers, though down dip into the Peru-Chile Trench. Did have some deeper movement last night as well into the Argentina area. That one was 199 kilometers down into the Peru-Chile Trench as well. All right, Alaska. Notice the activity, though. Most of the activity, if you look on this map, confined up here, Alaska, West Coast, and well inland into the North American Plate and the South American region. That's that teeter-totter effect we're kind of looking for, that we've been watching, I should say. But in this case, if we're looking for some relief of pressure, I should say, along the eastern portion of the Pacific Plate and adjacent plates over here, we need to see some much larger, deeper earthquake movement across the western Pacific and areas down south here. And that includes areas around the Philippine Plate. So we'll watch this area for potential large-scale movement, but I think right now this area we need to keep an eye on as well. Alaska did see some movement overnight. Looking at the 2.5 map and above, we did have a 3.6 just outside of the Anchorage area. Pretty shallow earthquake, though, about 12 kilometers deep, and some further movement here along this little, kind of like a linear section here along this major plate boundary, known as the the Aleutian Trench. Pacific Plate and the North American Plate boundary, subduction zone right there. Pretty hazardous area. Looking at the rest of the quakes here on the microquake scale, showing some movement up through Denali and just outside of the Fairbanks area. A couple small microquakes overnight. And again, not a whole lot going on here, folks, across the western Pacific. The majority of this earthquake activity is older movement. We did see some deeper activity yesterday, and Those were a 4.3 and a 4.1. One of those way down there, 626 kilometers deep. Some of the Earth's deepest earthquakes take place right here in this little region just outside of Fiji, right around the Tonga Trench. It's kind of like a recycling area. It seems as though a lot of times when we see some deeper movement up here and larger at that matter, tend to trigger the plate dynamics up here across the Western Pacific. But so far I haven't seen it. We did have a 5.0 in the Vanuatu area. That one pretty deep as well, following this activity in Fiji. So that could be a sign of possibly some, well, I guess I could call it unzipping or further buildup of pressure here along these regions of the Western Pacific and the Philippine Plate. Big island of Hawaii. Got a little activity today around Mauna Loa up top. Looks like a couple small microquakes, 2.4 the largest, but no major swarms to report aside from our typical area around Pahala. Aside from that, what do we got here? One earthquake way up here off the coast of Norway, it looks like, 3.9. That's kind of weird, right? The USGS reporting a 3.9. Their 4.0 threshold only sticks in certain areas. Kind of weird. I kind of wish they would report at least maybe 3.0 and above for the international community. I think that would be pretty reasonable. 3.9, again, well off the coast. Haven't seen too much activity out there recently, but then again, we have to check the EMSC model for that recent activity in that region because of that 4.0 threshold. But looking over here, see what we got. Yeah, not a whole lot. These guys reporting a 4.2. That one's, hold on a second here. That's kind of odd. So these guys reporting a 3.9, right? These guys reporting a 4.2. So a little bit of differences there in the magnitude. But no further activity kicking up here, it looks like, within that region. Just most of the activity around the Mediterranean and over here in areas to the east. Let's see what else we got here, folks. Earthquakes Canada. We haven't checked those guys out in a couple days. I do like to cover up north. It does play a major part on what's going on along the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate boundary, but there's not a whole lot here in recent days. Looks like some older movement up into the Alaska region and off the coast into the kind of looks like the northern areas of the Cascadia subduction zone. A lot of swarming going on here within this area of the Pacific and the North American Plate boundary. But as far as recent activity, these guys reporting the latest quake here, a 2.2 earthquake. That one coming in looks like yesterday time frame. So technically not a whole lot of new activity across the board here in Canada, but definitely been active over the last couple weeks, it looks like, around the board. But that's it for today as far as the activity goes. Let's see what else we got here, folks. A real quick check of the solar weather activity once again. Looking at the current data here from the Space Weather Prediction Center. I still think we should watch this, the sunspots, for some more activity. Definitely have a good potential of seeing some more M flares today. So we'll see what develops, right? Seems like it's always active overnight when I'm sleeping, like 1, 2 in the morning. Alrighty, guys. Have a good day. I got a lot of schoolwork to do again. You guys are going to be here, probably going to be hearing me say that daily. Just entering into the fall semesters and getting a lot of work done. A lot of knowledge to soak in, so to speak. Got a cluster of quakes here, southern end of the Philippine Plate. Again, USGS not really showing most of that, but that could be, it kind of goes hand in hand with all the deeper activity over here. As I was stating, a lot of westward pressure movement and adjustment that can take place. We're seeing that adjustment over here, but I don't think, honestly, I don't think these little 3s and 4s relieve the pressure that we see out here along the west coast right now, because we're still seeing that swarming well inland into the North American plate there at Yellowstone. So we'll watch it and see what takes place. Gonna get me some more coffee and enjoy this day. Have a good day, folks. We'll chat you guys a little bit later on. Stay safe.